Welcome to Creepy and Geeky. I'm your host, Robert, and today I'm talking to new guest Rebecca Sayce about the Final Destination. But first, I'm on my own this week for the intro. Unfortunately, Donna is still unavailable, but hopefully she'll be back next week. And I didn't coordinate with Violet in time, so it's just me. So let's get to it. So this week, as I was recording, like the night that I'm recording this, which is the night before it drops, I went to go see a couple of newish movies. I got to go see Now You See Me, Now You Don't, and Sisu Road to Revenge. So Now You See Me, Now You Don't. I enjoyed both of these movies. Now You See Me, Now You Don't is um, it's a great continuation of the series. So if you like the Now You See Me movies, the previous two, it's a lot of fun. It's in that same vein. I'm a sucker for magic and heists, so combining those two is like perfect for me. So yeah, so it was a lot of fun and getting everybody back together again. Plus, there's a couple of extra surprises in there, which I won't reveal, but definitely go check it out to if you like it. It seems to be doing well, which is great. Uh, and then right after that, I went. I actually saw both of these tonight, like right when I like as a double feature. So then I watched Sisu Road to Revenge. I didn't see the original Sisu in theaters, but I did buy it on Blu-ray or 4K. I'm not sure which one I have, but I did buy it and enjoyed that one a lot. And this one's same kind of thing. If you like um, super violent action movies that are just it's just violence galore. If you like that kind of thing, then you'll like this one. It was a lot of fun. It's a quick like hour and a half, I think at most. Um, and like I said, if you like the first one, you like this one, and this one has the extra added bonus of having both Richard Brake and Stephen Lang in it as well. So they added some extra star power to it compared to the first one. That's all I have for you. New movies that I got to see. There was a couple of trailers also that I want to talk about. One that just dropped today, or that I just noticed today on YouTube, was a new Glenn Powell movie called How to Make a Killing, which is coming out from A24, which looks like a lot of fun. The setup is like his mother was the black sheep of this very rich family, so he was born into like not having this money now, and so but eventually he could inherit the money, but he has to wait until I guess everybody else in the family dies, and then um, Margaret Qualley implants the idea of him killing off everybody else in his family so that he can speed up the process. So so that's the gist of the movie is him bumping off everybody, from what it looks like in the trailer. So looks like a lot of fun. I like Glenn Powell. The Running Man was really good. So this one should be a lot of fun as well. I'm always up for a good. It looks like a good comedy, like you know, probably not horror, but comedy killing movie. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, no, that's it. Looks like a lot of fun. There's a new trailer for, and unfortunately, I hate that I'm saying this without Donna, but there's a new trailer for Wake Up Dead Man, the next Knives Out movie, which is coming to theaters for like a week or two and then going straight to Netflix, which kind of sucks. It'd be fine. Like, again, I really wish Netflix would put out physical media. Like, even if they're not going to put it out in theaters, I really wish they would put it out on disc. Because it's weird that I've got Knives Out, but I don't have Glass Onion and I won't have this either. So it's just frustrating because it's like, it feels like they're leaving money on the table, rather than expanding it. There's a lot of people who don't want to watch things on Netflix. They don't want to subscribe all the time and do all that, and things get lost in the shuffle. But if they would put these things out on disc, there'd probably be quite a few people who would buy them also on top of the people who are watching it on the streaming network. So anyway, it's just but this movie looks interesting. It looks fun. Each one of these Knives Out movies always looks like a ton of fun. And so it'll definitely be um something to look forward to, whether I get to see it in the theater or not. Fingers crossed I'll get to see it in the theater. I did get to see Glass Onion in the theater when it came out, so hopefully I'll get to see this one in the theater also. And the final trailer that I want to talk about is the new Hunger Games Sunrise on the Reaping. Now, my daughter Katrina, and I are big Hunger Games fans, have been since the books first came out originally, before the movies even came out. And we love this series. And Sunrise on the Reaping, I just listened to the audiobook about this on this like just a couple of months ago while I was working, and it's fantastic. It's probably my favorite book of the whole series so far, um, because it's really there's a lot going on, and it's really brutal, and it's just I don't know, it fits really well with the rest of the Hunger Games series. So I'm excited to check that out. Check out the movie and see how well they adapted it. Fingers crossed, it's a really good adaptation. Seems to be so far based on this first trailer. So I'm excited, but it's like literally a year from now when it's coming out. So we got a long while to wait. So, but that's all I have for this week. Um, Really quick. Um, I can't wait for Donna to come back. Fingers crossed, she should be back next week. And basically, that's all I got. And stay tuned for the rest of this episode. New guest Rebecca Sayce is joining me for the Final Destination 4. And it's a good conversation about a not so great movie, but it should be a lot of fun. Hopefully, you guys will enjoy it as much as I enjoyed the conversation with Rebecca. So, all right, I'll see you in a moment. On today's episode, I'm talking to Rebecca Sayce about The Final Destination. Rebecca is a freelance entertainment journalist and film critic at Metro, Digital Spy, and Fangoria, and the deputy editor at Filmhounds magazine. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here
Yeah,
to talk about the film.
yeah, glad to have you on. Um, this is this is an interesting movie to have you on for a first episode. uh, So this is kind of the most I think in general most people think the Final Destination is the worst of the bunch. Um and while I agree that it's probably the least effective of them all, for a few reasons we'll get into, that I think that it's not terrible. It's still not bad, and it holds pretty true to the feeling of most of the rest of the movies. It does have some issues though. So, but that being said, what are your feelings on the movie? Kind of like a general overview. How do you feel about the movie? When did you see it, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I would definitely agree. I think it probably is my least favorite of the franchise. But I mean, even a bad Final Destination movie is still a Final Destination movie. Like, I still
True.
enjoy them. They've always been a constant through my entire life. I would love it if we're on like Final Destination 19 when I'm like an old woman and my kids and my grandkids are watching it. Like, I'm always going to enjoy them. I think it does have a lot of issues, like you say, but I mean, it's still really fun. I think I saw this when it first came out in 2009. I didn't see it in cinemas. I think I saw it when it had been released at home. So maybe it was 2010, something like that, when I was like 14,
All right.
15. And I mean, at the time, I really enjoyed it. I still thought it was great. It's only when I've watched it, as I've gone into like film criticism and watched it when I was older with a more critical eye, that I've realized how many issues it had. But
Yeah.
when I first watched it, it was just death after death, carnage, crazy acting, some of the weirdest dialogue choices I've ever heard. And I was like, wow, this is great.
No, absolutely. I agree. I think this is actually the first of the series that I went to the theater to go see. I had seen the previous three, but I think I saw all of those on video. And then every single one since then, 4, 5, and 6, I've all seen at the theater. So this was kind of a weird one to actually go to the theater. It's actually, funnily enough, it's the one. It's got the lowest reviews, but it's made the most money. Um,
Yeah.
and so like worldwide, and so and it had the biggest budget too. So, and I think a lot of that budget goes into the CGI and the 3D effects, because this one was actually shown in 3D at the theaters, and I think that was part of the appeal for me, because it was the real D 3D. um but it was interesting because something I read too about the 3D effects is the director, who's actually is same director as Final Destination 2. He was very specific about how he wanted the movie to feel immersive and not just have things flying at your face every 4 minutes. And I was like, but that's the whole reason for 3D. Like, I don't, so I've never been a huge 3D fan. Like, I love when they do stuff like this, when it is a gimmick, because I think 3D is a gimmick. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't think that having the immersive layered reality 3D is that interesting compared to having stuff fly at your face. That's
Yeah, especially with
for
Final
me what
Destination
3D
as
should.
well.
Yeah. So I think that he like, and they do have it in here. There's definitely moments when you watch it now, because you can only watch it in 2D. There's definitely moments where you can see the 3D was there. And it kind of like, okay, I get it. That would have been an interesting, cool thing. And I remember it was fairly cool to watch in the theater. Um, but it's definitely was a wild experience seeing it in the theater in 3D. But yeah, nowadays you can't watch it, and I feel like there were definitely some missed opportunities with the 3D in the movie, um, that they could have done more of. But overall, like you said, I like the Final Destination franchise. It's one of those franchises that, even with it being a bad one, like overall, the whole rest of the series has been great, and fun. And even when it's bad, there's still little bits and pieces here that you can enjoy, especially the death scenes. While
Yeah,
and
sure.
this is what I really kind of want to get into with this too, is like the death scenes in this movie aren't as elaborate. I don't feel um as the other ones. They're all more really straightforward. Um there's no what they seemed to start doing with 2 and 3 was they started to do all these little twists in the death scenes, where you would think it was going to go one way and then it ends up going a different way. And they didn't do that as much in this one. I noticed this one was all pretty straightforward, um, and it works. It's fine, but it really was reminiscent of number one, where number one was more kind of straightforward as well.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
Yeah, I'd agree to an extent. I think the deaths in this come thick and fast. Like
They
there's not
do,
much time between the deaths, and I think that's kind of to its detriment. Like I don't think the tension really builds with it, so I
right?
don't think any of them feel as impactful. But I do agree, a lot of these are a lot more straightforward. Like they're not as these big fantastical like set pieces, which I do enjoy. But I do think that a lot of the deaths in this were a lot less relatable. Like they weren't like where it really works in like 1 and 2, and I think again it sort of works in 5, is that everything feels like real fears. Whereas in
Yeah,
this, it didn't. Apart from, even though it's not an actual death scene, the car wash scene in this really got me because I
yeah.
was kind of car washes as a kid. So I thought, oh, I would have really liked this if I'd have watched this really young. But I don't know. I agree. I like that there's less fake outs in this because I really
Yeah,
didn't like the salon fake out in this one because I think there were so many cool opportunities with that. And instead she just
yeah,
gets a rock through the face. I think, oh,
yeah,
that's awful.
yeah,
But I
yeah,
did like that it was
yeah.
a
That
lot
was
more
like the only
straightforward.
sequence. Yeah, that was the only sequence with the fake outs that I. Yeah,
And that was the
and that was
coolest set. There was so
that
many cool
was.
deaths they could have had in the salon, and then they didn't,
Yeah,
and she just got taken out through the eye, which I love when they did that on Mythbusters to show that it can actually happen. Because I always thought
yeah,
that was
yeah.
so stupid when I first saw it, and then had to, take a step back and think, actually, okay, yeah, it can happen.
Well, I think that, like, because like you said, with this movie, the deaths just come quick. They're like, first you get the opening sequence, and then like the first death is pretty quick. on top of that, and then
Mhm.
every single one of them happens right afterward, and they don't play it out. This is also the movie with the lowest runtime. This one clocks in at only an hour and 21 minutes, whereas each of the other ones is an hour and a half plus. So I think that's kind of part of what ended up happening is that with that very short runtime, um, that kind of condensed everything, and they still had a big cast of characters. But here was the other thing: you never really got to know a lot of the other characters too. With the previous installments, you kind of got to live around some of the characters, not all of them, but a good portion of them. So you got to feel who they were. The racist guy dying real quick, the mechanic, not seeing him at all until they go talk to him, and then his death. There's so many instances of that you really didn't get that emotional payoff in that way, where you had that tension build with all of these characters, and then you had no real like um, sympathy for them
Yeah.
either. And I think that cost them as well, in terms of like people, like you said, when I watched this originally, I was like, oh, this was fun. But then yeah, again, upon rewatch and critical reappraisal, I've been like, it's not that good. It's still fine, but these are definitely the weird little nitpicky things that I can understand why this movie um has taken kind of that drubbing afterward, but why also at the same time it did well to begin with. So because short runtime in 3D, all that's attractive for people. It's a quick movie, and I think it's so funny too because I think this was I took my kids to go see this. So 2009 was interesting because so that would have made my daughter only like 7 years old.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was a great dad. Um, so um, but we also saw this in the movie theater at a mall with escalators. So so leaving the
Amazing.
movie after that was just kind of, and because it involves a movie theater blowing up and escalators like crashing and everything, and a death on an escalator, that was a little bit of a weird walkout when we were done.
That's what helps it have the impact, though, I think.
Yeah, I
Like, if you
think
can
that was the
relate it
most
to something that
relatable
actually
part of
freaks you
it
out.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what's interesting for that is that, and like you said, with a lot of the other Final Destination movies, that we have a lot of relatable sequences. Whereas, and this one was fine. It had relatable-ish sequences, but there was still those disconnects. I get why they kind of went for the racist guy angle and stuff like that, but also at the same time, it just felt
So
so
obvious.
caricature, and so like I don't know, it just was too much. And then like if they were gonna play with that guy should have been one of the ones to like I guess end up later in the movie, just so that you got kind of like when his death came, it would feel more earned and more like cathartic in a way, because you're just like, oh, this guy's a piece of crap. Like, we
Yeah.
really want him to die, and you're just waiting and waiting. And instead, he's like the first one. So you get rid of him off the board. And so, which is fine. But I don't know. It's the weird things like that, the weird choices they made in this movie that kind of, upon those rewatches that you look back and go, this movie just kind of failed in the weirdest ways. So,
Yeah, I'd agree, especially with that death. Like, as we look at the franchise as a whole now, that has done some sort of darker characters and darker storylines, it makes a bit more sense. But at the time, where like one, two, and three had been just like the fun, silly slasher films, it really
yeah,
comes out of left field, and it doesn't really feel like it's handled particularly well. Like, it doesn't
no,
need to be quite as racist as it is. And like you say, I
right.
think I would have had it like a much worse death further on. And yeah, like you say, I don't feel like you really connect to any of the characters because you don't get any time. I mean, even like the central four characters, like we've got
Yeah,
Nick, Laurie, Hunt, and Janet, we don't get any time to really know them. And they all seem to hate each other, and it makes absolutely no sense that they're friends. So then you've got no
yeah,
hope for like the extended characters. And I think obviously with the budget and with the constraints of it being 3D and how much it would have cost to make, it probably couldn't have been much longer than it was. And I think a tight run time's
Right.
always good. But it did suffer in this with having so many death scenes and not really being able to connect to any characters because then you don't really care what happens to them. Like we've had a lot of like stereotypes and caricatures in the previous films. Like don't get me wrong, they haven't been like the most rounded characters, but you do at
Right.
least care. And how the deaths have been set up, you care too. Like again, like the highway scene, you get that sense of like where everyone is in the scene and what's going on and how they're going to collide. Whereas with this, like even in the opening premonition, you don't really get that. Even though I quite like it, I know a lot of people don't like the racetrack premonition, but I think it's okay. It's
Yeah,
that's one
it
of the
was
most
fine.
people ones for me. I've been to one of like those events, and I always feel like someone's
Yeah.
about to die. Like I do think that actually is quite a good one. But other than that, you don't really get a sense of like peril in any of them. And then because you've therefore not got to know any of the characters, they just don't really hit. And yeah, it's a real shame
Right.
because there's some good ideas in this film, and I always respect a director that's trying to do something different in a franchise, and there's a lot of that here, but it just none of it lands. It feels like a film that was just made very quick. They made the decision to
Yeah.
do 3D because of Avatar and how much it made, and it being gimmicky. New technology, they didn't really know how to use it, and it felt like everything was just to showcase the 3D rather
Yeah.
than to make a Final Destination film.
Yeah. Well, and they had thought about making number three in 3D also. They were going to make it Final Destination 3D. So they were going to do that, but the technology was even more expensive. And I don't think they had the version of 3D quite yet that they had for number four. Um, back in 2006, now it's 2009. So 3 years on, and I'm not sure about the timeline of when those 3D formats came around, but I know that that was a limitation that they were afraid of in number three was just because of the red green.
Yeah.
So with that, they pushed it to number four, and that was one of the reasons why they got the second the director from number two back, David R. Ellis, which I brought up in the second episode. But it's interesting that this director, he was also the director of Snakes on a Plane, which
Oh,
is
brilliant film.
fantastically cheesy. But also he mysteriously died in his hotel room in like South Africa at one point. Yeah. And so like it's such a weird thing for like the director of
Yeah.
two of the Final Destination movies to suddenly die, and they never really, at least as far as his Wikipedia goes, they've never released how he died. So
That's
yeah,
weird.
yeah, it's very weird. So yeah. But yeah, no, I think like with the racist thing, yeah, it's such a huge caricature. I mean, he's like a guy like literally singing Dixie, like whistling Dixie, with a Nazi tattoo on his arm, and it's such a huge caricature, such broad version of that character that was just like, okay, could we make him a little bit more subtle or something so that it's not
Was the
so
Nazi
like
tattoo necessary?
right,
Could
and
have
so
still been
it's like
racist without a gigantic
I
swastika.
right. It's just so silly. And then like, yeah, it's just I don't know. It's yeah, like you said, like none of the people are very likable. And that's fine. Like don't get me wrong. I'm all for unlikable characters and stuff. But like no you never get to I don't know, the three main leads of the first three movies, you got to know them and you got to feel for them. And maybe it's just because the actor himself wasn't very good, but I really think it's more the material was just not there for
Yeah.
him to be very to dive into. So you never really got a sense of who he was, how he was dealing with this. It just the other three, there was a real fear for them, and a real fear for their friends. And he didn't never came off like that. So I do think it's a combination of both the acting and the material. Um, but and also the way the premonitions came about because they used some heavy CGI in this, and I'm glad they
Very much
backpedaled
so.
that in the later installments. But the heavy CGI for these premonitions was just really silly and took you way out of it because it's just like it if you were a fan of these movies and then to have those premonitions like taken out like that, it was just I don't know, it just really weirded me out. when watching it. Every time I've watched it since then, it's just it takes me out.
Yeah,
So
it's aged so poorly as well. Like I remember even when I first watched it and not knowing too much about film, thinking some of this looks weird, but watching it now, like it
oh,
looks like
and it's
PlayStation
bad
1
CGI.
graphics. Like it is
Yeah,
so bad. And there were films at the time with CGI that looked so much better. And especially when you
yeah.
watched a video of how they did like some of this, 'cause I know some of it was practical, then it was CGI, then obviously like the 3D technology. The effort they went to for the practical bits and how they did it, it looks so cool. So to then
Mhm.
enhance it with this weird CGI, just it makes no sense to me. Like I
Yeah,
surely it would have been cheaper and easier to do it practically. I mean, I don't know.
right.
I don't make films, so maybe I'm totally wrong, but I don't know. Some of it just makes no sense to me why they did that.
No, absolutely agreed. Yeah, it does. It doesn't make sense. Like they should have stuck with practical with CGI cleanup, um, but like they have in every other movie. And I'm glad to see that with number five they kind of went back to that. That
Me too.
they went back to a lot of the original stuff. It felt like because each movie has tried to expand on the mythology and try to change the premonitions because like with number three they were doing it through the pictures, and this time they were just like, okay, well we're gonna do it this way and change it up a little bit and be weird about it. It just yeah it just didn't work, and I think it's just it I think it was probably a cost cutting measure with the um because 3D was costing so much, that they probably ended up having to do so much in CG that um, to them made sense at the time. So, and I mean, to be fair, the movie was the most successful at that point. So it's just
Oh,
they were right in a way, I guess. But yeah, I think for all intents and purposes, they got their money back and it was a success. And all of these movies have been a success for the most part. Um, but it's yeah, it's just weird. It's just very
yeah,
weird
I am glad they
to
made
have
so
them
much
make
money
that choice.
on this film to then make five because five's great. I
Oh
will
yeah,
take having four to have five because
yeah,
that's one of my favorites.
absolutely,
But it,
absolutely,
I,
yeah,
I've always wondered how this made so much money. Like I understand obviously
right,
Final Destination 3D, but then surely after you've read so many reviews saying it's a piece of shit, and then people are coming out of it saying it's a piece of shit, people aren't going to continue
right.
going. But they did. Like, hasn't this made the most money of any Final Destination film? Or maybe not
So
now. I know at the time it had.
so I will blame this on lack of social media because in 2009 we barely had smartphones, and so
That's
we
fair.
barely had like Twitter and Facebook existed, but they were still mostly computer based. So I would think that at that point you still didn't have that what we have now in terms of wide word of mouth style things. So whereas that probably helped it in a way, it was pre huge smartphone social media style thing, and so it lived off of the fact that the first three were pretty good, and then this one came along and everybody's like, oh yeah, we got to go see this one, and it was a novelty because it was 3D and everybody was going to see everything 3D back then. So and 3D was just it was so annoying. I'm so glad there's so much less 3D nowadays.
Me
It's like
too.
there's still a
I remember
lot.
seeing
There's still
Avatar.
almost too much. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Say
remember
what
seeing
now?
Avatar in the same year,
Yeah.
and it just made me feel sick. It just made me feel really sick. And then I did
Uh,
want to go and see Final Destination, but I was not allowed.
yeah. No. So yeah, I've never seen any of the Avatar movies. I kind of weirdly refuse to go see them because they
I don't
just
like
don't.
them.
Here's the thing: they just don't look interesting to me. That's the part of the problem. And the 3D aspect of it is not a draw for me. And that's what always the funny thing about it. Like when the first movie came out, everybody's like, because it was, I heard so many people talk about, oh well, it's just the same story of like Pocahontas and all these other things that it was being compared to of the similar story, and um and then people are like, but no, you got to go see it because it's in this wonderful 3D and everything. I'm like, that's not a draw for me, man. Like, it's just
I remember
like,
the 3D being really good, but then I
yeah.
couldn't tell you a thing that happened in it. And I've seen the second one
Well,
as well. I still couldn't tell you what happens in it. Like the story is so nothing.
Well, and that's the funny thing too, because like the people who are defenders of the Avatar movies, they're just like, no, they're great, they're so important, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, but they're not. Like, there's literally no, they've left no like, and this is the thing that other critics have said, is there's no cultural like
No.
like it has never hit the culture in such a way like something like Star Wars has, or the Marvel movies have, or something like that, where they permeated the culture in such a way. Avatar has not done that. Avatar just solely exists pretty much in movie form.
Yeah.
Like they do comic books and stuff like that, but I don't know anybody who buys them. So um it's just it's an interesting thing. I don't want to get too off tangent, um but I feel like, because it's just indicative of that whole 3D. They're the ones who, because that movie succeeded so well, that's the reason why 3D continued for so long. um
Yeah.
and that, yeah, it just as a fad, and I'm so glad to see it dead now, or dying. It's not fully dead yet. There's still movies today being like put in the theaters in 3D, and I still don't understand it. Like, unless you have the gimmick of stuff flying at my face, I'm not going. So,
Yeah. Like
like,
Final
horror,
Destination is the perfect franchise for it as
it
well, really.
is.
It
Yeah.
really is
And
the perfect
horror in
franchise for
general.
3D.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But definitely Final Destination. It makes the most sense. And I think this is an interesting movie too, because this is the only one without Tony Todd at all. Three
Yes.
didn't have him as Bloodworth. He was just a voice in a couple of moments in the movie. But four doesn't have him at all. So it's like they completely cut out anybody that could have like helped the movie, or like cost anything extra. So, and I think that's largely, although they did get McKelty Williamson, he's the most recognizable person.
Yeah.
You know, Bubba from Forrest Gump. So so that was interesting to see at least somebody with a name in the movie. But like literally everybody else at the time, I don't know if anybody has really gone on to do anything significant. But like most everybody else in that movie is like at the time was fairly unknown or early in their careers. So, which is fair to like most of the other movies as well. Most of the cast of the earlier ones also had, you know, not huge draws on their names. Um, except for the first one. The first one had like a good cast of, young teen
Yeah.
or young adult actors who were, popping up in various places. So it does feel like, I will say that I do like them being adults in this. Two and four, leaning in more of the adults than the kids aspect, I think helps. It's always nice when it's not always tied to teenagers. I think even with number
Yeah.
three, them all being seniors about to graduate helps. They're still teenagers, but they're on that cusp of adulthood. So that, I don't know, I don't know. The franchise seems better when it's focused more on adults. Um, so that aspect was good. I think the death scenes, like, I think they're fine. They are definitely elaborate, even if they're not overly complex. Um, the racist getting dragged by his own truck was interesting. We did get the fake out with the mechanic, um, a little bit of a fake out, which was nice. Um, the salon, like you said, that was probably the best death scene, just in terms of all the fake outs that we get.
Yeah.
Um, that was probably the most fun. Um, and I do like that there is the how it twists it, and you think they actually won for once, and then there was a guy who was in the rubble that got out. Um, and that was, again, that one was pretty straightforward. Again, like a lot of these, especially the stuff at the end, was fairly straightforward. There wasn't a lot of very twisty things. And then just the very end just kind of was just like, it's such a kind of a letdown of their
It
deaths at the
really
end.
is. Like, I just felt like I say, with a lot of the deaths, anything that would get anyone, like I say, I think I'm probably on the outskirts with the car wash scene, even though like it's not a proper death scene. But I think where this really let itself down was the fact that it wasn't there were no stakes really. Like it didn't feel like it was
Yeah,
anything that was going to connect with anyone. Other than again, maybe the racetrack scene if people do go to events
yeah,
like that and can like
yeah.
obviously do get injured and do die at those events. Like it is relatable. And the cinema scene as well. I do really like that, even though it just makes no sense to have that much combustible fluid in a cinema. But
Right.
if you
Yeah,
go to a cinema tons, I get it. The idea of dying in a cinema, maybe. Okay, fire in a cinema and everyone dying. Okay, fair enough. But
yeah,
the rest of it
yeah,
kind of felt like yeah, the deaths are good, but they didn't really have the same impact as any of the others.
yeah,
But it doesn't feel like they make you feel anything because like we say, you don't feel anything for the characters, but then there's nothing to really tap into any of those fears in this one. And I feel like it was a
yeah.
little bit of an issue in the most recent one as well. Like again,
Mm,
some of the death scenes, they're more elaborate, so they're fun, but it's
yeah,
still not stuff that necessarily gets to people, which is a
right.
shame.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed Bloodlines. I think it's one of the better
Me too. I
ones.
really
And
liked it.
I think even if it's not relatable, I think that one worked because, and I'll get into it in my future episode, but I think that one just really worked, because of the family aspect of it and just the
For
ties to
sure.
like the universe as a whole. So I think that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, how that
For
experimented with the formula, I felt really worked. Whereas where they tried
Yeah,
to experiment with it in this, they didn't. It felt
yeah,
very thought out. I feel like the gap between Five and Bloodlines, for them to really think about it and work it into what works with
yeah,
Five
yeah,
now,
yeah,
really worked. Whereas with this, it was just let's showcase 3D and call it a Final
yeah.
Destination film.
Right. Well, and I think it's so funny too because this one is called The Final Destination. Like they meant for it to be like the end. Like, they were just
Thank
like,
God it
eh.
wasn't.
Oh, I
Oh
know.
God.
Yeah, what a terrible way for it to end. Yeah. Well, and that's what's fun. That's what's great about it too is, and again, I'll talk about this in the next episode, number five, that I'm so thankful that number five came back and five was so good
Oh, I
that,
love Five.
five is so good. Um, yeah, I previously got to talk about five on Fishnets and Philosophies, and as part of their Final Destination thing, and that was one of the things too. Is like when they were casting for guests and everything like that, and which ones they'd want. I was like, I will take number five in a heartbeat. Like I love five, so I can't wait to talk about that next. But yeah, I think that I agree with you. I think other than the car wash sequence, and the car wash sequence um, is definitely one of those ones that you could definitely feel relatable. The swimming pool, not so much. I mean, that's such a weird random thing. Like, I don't think that would actually ever happen anyway. Um, and then, yeah, just everything else is just this. Like you said, the theater one is somewhat relatable, but also, like you said, why would they have so much combustible material behind there? It's like just
It's ridiculous.
randomly weird.
I quite like the
um,
suicide fake out in it. I think that's really interesting how they look at that.
yeah,
Like, because I'd wondered that in previous ones, like, why has someone not tried to take it into their own hands? And I really liked that they showed
yeah,
like, well, you can't because it's not Death's design. They're going to kill you how they want to. I
yeah.
thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. No, I did like that too. Yeah, yeah. Because it's like, no, he's not going to let you die till he's ready to let you die. And it was something that was mentioned in the last episode too, that kind of got glossed over real quick in that. But she mentions that the deaths are cruel,
Yeah,
and that is the thing is that he like death doesn't want you to take your own life because it's not about the life, it's you were meant to die at this point, so now he's going to make it especially cruel and weird
yeah,
and like so which I think kind of sucks because it's like especially if you just got caught along with some of the people you weren't intending to not die. um but I do think it's I do, and I will say I think it's interesting that for each one of these, um, just not a single member of these people who um escape death ever truly escape it because by the end, or you find out in the next movie if somebody did make it that those people ended up dying too. That
yeah.
nobody survives ever. That they still die in a weird way later. Um, and so I think that's an interesting aspect of this, is that, and that's what I like about it too, is it's fun to watch these people try to figure out how to stop it. You're rooting for them, but you also know by the end of it they're pretty much going to be dead anyway. That death will never stop, and he'll keep coming for you. So
I do think that inevitability is really interesting in Final Destination because a lot of franchises they do try and bring in extra elements to sort of spice it up a little or expand the
yeah,
lore. Whereas in this, we've never really had that. It's always been, well, death is coming and that's it. And I think
yeah,
that's really interesting. It's just a simplistic concept that means you can focus on the deaths. And we've had so
yeah,
many good ones across the franchise. Like as much as,
yeah.
some of the ones in four, they're not great. If you compare them to other horror franchises, however,
Oh
brilliant.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, agreed. Like, if you're looking at, like, one of the, like a simple slasher or something like that, yeah, these are fantastic. They're still not great compared to other Final Destinations, but within horror itself, it's, yeah, definitely still miles above a lot of the plain regular slasher stuff you get. Um, no, I agree. And I think that's what makes this franchise as a whole one of my absolute favorites. It's something that I'll go back to multiple times because it's just fun to see the different deaths and the weird stuff that they'll go through to get to that
Yeah.
point. It makes it very entertaining in that way. So um, definitely worth watching. And that's what I'll say with this movie as well, is um is that while it may be the worst of the Final Destinations, I think it's still worth watching. It's got issues, but what horror franchise doesn't have a few, one or two bad movies in them, if not more than that, depending on the franchise. Um, but yeah, it's good to see that this, as much as this one is like not great, it's still okay, and I can see where it succeeded more so than others. And I think a large part of that had to do with the extra cost of going to see a 3D version of it. You're paying those extra $3 for those glasses. So,
Yeah, I definitely
so
agree. I think Final Destination is quite a consistent horror franchise. Like, there's a
right.
lot more like Hellraiser. You look at like the
Yeah, I
highs
was
and
going to mention
that, and it
Hellraiser,
is
that is just terrible.
cursed. Or even like
Yeah,
Halloween and Friday the 13th and stuff. There are some
yeah,
terrible installments in this. Whereas,
yeah,
like, yeah, four isn't great, but it is certainly nowhere near as bad as like some of the worst horror films I've ever seen. And the
yeah,
highs are really high. Like, if you look at one, two, and five, which I think are probably my
yeah,
favorites, they're
yeah,
great. Really, really good creative slasher films.
yeah, yeah. I think I'd agree. One, two, five, and six for me are high up there, with three being pretty close, though. Three is still pretty
Yeah.
close. Four is just like right there at the bottom, but again, it's not that bad. It's like, for me, consistency wise, this series kind of mirrors the Scream franchise, which for me is pretty consistent. Um, and then like the Chucky series
Yeah.
is fairly consistent, even if you argue that Seed of Chucky is kind of wonky. But I mean, that one still got a lot of appeal to it. Um, but I think that, it's like you said, Friday the 13th has some stinkers, especially towards the end. Just Halloween right in the middle, like everything in the middle is just kind of like, ugh.
Nonsense.
And that's my own opinion. I know there's a lot of defenders of those things. And the Hellraiser movies, I don't know how anybody can defend most of the Hellraiser movies.
They are bad. I watched them all for
Yeah.
Moving Picks Film Club to do like a ranking of it, and it is not
I
something I will ever do again.
I've only seen the first two and then the Hulu one. I've never watched any other ones because I've heard
Don't
they're all
bother.
terrible. Those are the
Don't
only
bother.
ones that are any good. Yeah. So,
Three
yeah.
isn't awful. I don't mind three, but
Yeah.
everything in between that and the Hulu one is utter
Yeah.
garbage.
And I will say, and I know this is a controversial opinion, but I prefer the Hulu one over every other one, because I think the Hulu one went in like such a unique direction and explored what I feel is like the real mythos behind it all. in a way that made so much more sense to me than watching even 1 and 2 did.
I can
So
totally understand that. I think I still
yeah,
definitely prefer the first one, but
yeah,
it's definitely my second, like in second place, and that is probably
yeah,
because of the nostalgia to the first. Because I do agree, I prefer the
right,
themes in the newer
yeah,
one, and I like the overall
yeah,
vibe of it a lot more than the
yeah.
original.
Yeah, it just felt like the mythos was so much more like easier to digest in that one.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it was explained better, and I was like, okay, I finally get this franchise now. So, um, but yeah, no, it's just yeah. There's a lot of stinkers out there in a lot of these franchises. I think that's just par for the course when you've gone for as long as you have in a lot of these, and especially for the times they came out in. Because I will argue
Yeah,
that part of the issue with Halloween and the uh, Friday the 13th and even Nightmare on Elm Street is just the 80s and 90s were not great always in terms of storytelling. A lot
hmm,
of times they were just kind of throwing things at the wall and seeing what stuck. Um, Whereas with I think Final Destination, each one of the first four movies came out in every 3 years. It was 2000, 2003, 2006, and 2009. So they had some time to kind of germinate on all these and kind of get an idea and work on it without rushing into it. I do think that this one was probably a little bit more rushed just because of the 3D aspect of it and the use of
yeah,
CGI. I think that's the only reason why it just didn't connect. And again, I do think the some of the actors just weren't as good as earlier actors, and
yeah.
earlier ensembles. So, um, but I'm glad with number 5 we got back on track and
Oh, for sure.
we continue on. So, um, was there anything else that you wanted to mention that we haven't mentioned about this so far?
I don't think so. I mean, one of my favorite parts in this was the credits with the X-rays from the previous deaths, which I
Right,
think it's a shame that they sort of peaked with that in like the very opening.
right,
But no, other than that, I mean, the only other thing is some of the bonkers things that are said in the script in this, like when they're trying to explain what's happening. Like he's like, "Oh, I think I can see how they're dying." People don't speak like that. Like how
yeah,
they speak in this is completely crazy.
yeah.
But I quite like it. Like rewatching it now, it's just so silly. It's funny. And I
I
don't, that
think
is
it's
100% not what they intended, but I think on reappraisal, this film
right.
probably will be seen better as it goes on because it's just so stupid.
I think this will be better as a group movie as it goes along. One of those things that you watch as a
Sure.
group and you make fun of and you like nitpick and just do that kind of thing. It's going to be one of those kind of movies that fans will enjoy watching and participating in more so than enjoying it for the the actual good storytelling in
Anything about it.
it. Right. But no, I agree with you. I think, but I definitely think that there are some good moments. The kills, while not being complex, are still brutal. And other than the heinous use of CGI, I think that overall, I think the it's very gory and very fun with what they do. Um, but yeah, no, that the end sequence I did want to mention again because like it's just that ending death where they finally think they're all completely free and it's just the three of them at the coffee place, which I thought was funny. Again, death by caffeine um, was the
Yeah.
name of the coffee place. um, the truck comes in and you don't actually see their bodies get hit by the truck or anything. It immediately goes into a CGI X-ray, and then just their deaths are all done in X-ray mode. And it's such a weird, cheap cop out
It
to
is
do it like
such a
that.
cop out.
It's
It's after how you've
such a
seen all the
waste.
like, even though I've moaned about the deaths in this film, they're far better than that ending. They could have
Oh yeah.
done so much with that ending. I did read there were alternate endings to this film that like
Oh,
they could have gone
interesting.
with literally anything else than what they did. Like I know it was
Yeah.
like cutting back round to the like I say, like the deaths from the previous films and the X-rays,
Yeah.
but they could have really gone all out with that ending. And like you said, there's little references in that, like death by caffeine. If you read the menus, it's all death, 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 death. Like death's
Yeah.
everywhere in that scene. And then you don't see them die. Like, are you
Yeah.
trying to piss me off? Like, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah, no, it's such a huge cop out, and it's just such a weird way to end the movie, and it's like, I don't know, it's just bizarre. And I think that's what the with the movie the most is just a series of bizarre choices and uh, cutting corners for so that they could use CGI and 3D. And I think honestly, again, I think the CGI use was just because of 3D, because it was easier to do 3D if it was already
Yeah.
CGI.
Yeah. It's just
So
crazy to
because
me, the end in this, when you've had deaths coming thick and fast through the whole film, it
yeah,
felt like it was really ramping up to something. And then
yeah.
it doesn't. It's just,
No.
why? It makes
Oh,
no,
especially
like you
because when
say,
you watch
crazy
the begin
choices.
Yeah, and you watch that opening sequence with the car race and stuff like that. You could have had something similar, and like not just that, but even the theater scene. They already had two big, huge, multi-people death scenes in this movie. You could have still done something like that, and maybe that's where they were just like, "Look, we already did two. We're not going to do a third
What more
one."
do
And
you
it's like,
want?
well, then don't do that. Then like make them die individually or something. It's so bizarre. You're so bizarre. So I guess they were just like, look, we already showed you all of them dying twice before. We don't need to show you them dying a third time. So I don't know. It's so weird. It's the weirdest choices that they've made in this movie. Just boggle my mind. But overall, again, I think it's a okay movie. It's not terrible. It's the worst of the franchise, but it's still better than, like we said, a lot of other terrible movies and some of the other franchises that are just impossible to watch. This is actually still mildly entertaining, and there's still some good death sequences, and there's some okay storytelling for the most part. I mean, if you did skip this, I wouldn't blame you at all, and you'd be okay for skipping it. It absolutely has no connection to any of the other movies. You could easily check this one out and then go straight into number five. So if that's your choice, I will not blame you, and you can go ahead and do it all you want. Um, but if you do, you know, I hope you enjoy it for what it is, and it's got its moments, but overall, it's skippable. So,
Yeah, I
um,
agree.
but that's all I have for this episode. If you don't have anything else, then you can go ahead and let people know where they can find you online.
Yep, so you can find me at Becky L. Sayce over on Instagram and BL Sayce Writes on Blue Sky. You can find me, as we said earlier, at Metro, Digital Spy, Fangoria, and I'm also the deputy editor over at Filmhanes magazine. We've just had our latest issue come out, which has got Predator Badlands on the cover. It's got plenty of interviews inside, reviews, features, everything you can enjoy up for the Christmas period.
Awesome. Sounds great. All right. Well, go ahead and make sure to check her out over at her links. I will have her probably your Instagram up in the show notes. And then you can go visit all of her links. I know you got a big link tree. I went to it to check out what all you had. And thank you again for coming on. I appreciate it. I hope you had fun, and I hope you'll come back again for another episode in the future.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Let me know what
Awesome.
you've got coming up, and I'll be back.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you very much.
On the next episode, I'm pausing the Final Destination episodes for a week to celebrate my 200th episode. For this very special episode, I'm talking to Paul Ragsdale and Angelica de Alba from A&P Films about their new film, Only Fangs, their other films like Murder Size, their indie filmmaking journey, and more. It's a fun and fantastic conversation, and I can't wait for you all to hear it. Thanks for listening. Creepy and Geeky is produced and hosted by Robert Clark. If you like what you've heard, please consider giving the show 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. You can follow the podcast by going to creepyandgeeky.com and clicking on any of the social links. If you'd like to follow me, you can find my links at geekthulu.com. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more on TeePublic or by donating to the coffee page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.